Oh, hello.
Hello.
I'm sorry, am I in the middle of something?
I think you might
Doing
be
all right.
actually.
Am I the third wheel?
I'm in here.
Hello, and a very warm welcome to the second Historics podcast. I am motoring journalist and auctioneer wearing my L plates, very much so. I'm Vicki Butler-Henderson, and joining me at the company's HQ in leafy Buckinghamshire is the Historics auction expert, and he has actually written here, handsome. It's Mathew Priddy.
I'm sure I didn't write that. That must be someone else.
And fellow classic car expert, Dominic Lake.
Morning. Hello.
Hello. Here is what's coming up on this week's show. We discuss manual gearboxes and options lists. We look at the summer's shows, the races and events. And we look ahead to the forthcoming auction on September the 25th. All that and more to come. But first of all, chaps, please bring us up to date with where we are with the auction. We have got a couple of weeks until the next one. So what's happening?
Last couple of weeks have been really busy, Vicky. 180 cars consigned. You know, the sort of things that most schoolboys have got posters on their walls and dream of.
Was that the sort of posters you had on your walls?
No.
Okay.
The things that stick out are the odd and quirky cars. So in this auction, I've got one of those DUKW American Amphibious truck things, 6-wheel drive. This thing is a behemoth owned by an enthusiast, and it's realistically priced, at around the £30,000 mark. I think, which is great value for one of those. I've seen them go for almost double that recently.
Have you ever driven an amphibious vehicle from land into the water?
No.
I have done it one time, and it was then powered by a jet. It was like this sort of quite a reasonable sports car, with a convertible, and then onto the water, and then somehow a jet appears underneath. It was super weird,
Amazing.
But good fun.
Well, our sort of glorious leader, Mark, of course, he had amphibious vehicles for years, and I remember going in and out of them down at the lake, and he would always have one on the go, but it would always be this absolute tempted with fate that it would always break down.
Yeah.
And which was the lesser problem, because if you break down, okay, you're floating, someone has to come and get you, it's embarrassing. But also, if the bilge pump wasn't working and you broke down, you're also sinking. So you're in a sinking car that looks a bit like a boat, and suddenly all hell breaks loose. But it's a crazy. But then you think, could it take off again? Could there be amphibious cars going down the Thames, for instance, in London? Why not? I mean, crikey, if they can drive themselves,
Yeah.
why can't we bring that kind of thing back?
Yeah. Right. Summer shows, races and events now. I know you and I are big Formula One fans.
Yeah.
Dom, are you?
Not massively.
No. Why is that?
I went to the British Grand Prix at Silverstone the
Hey.
year when I worked for Jaguar, the year that Jaguar had their team that was run with Sir Jackie.
Paul Stewart Racing. Yes.
So Sir Jackie was one of my old clients.
Yeah.
And we went to that.
Drop another game. No.
Clang.
But when you're in the stadium and after the first lap, you haven't got a clue who's winning.
Well, not if you're in a stadium. If you're in a stadium, you're at the wrong place.
Yeah.
To start with. Do you mean the
grandstand? All right,
Okay,
the grandstand. I certainly had a seat, Vicky. Anyway, by the finishing line, the start-finish line.
Lovely.
And lunch, by the sounds of it.
Yeah.
But I couldn't see the fascination. The week before, we'd been for tyre testing and been in the pits. And when they started up and the chap goes like that, and the noise was amazing. And that being close up to one, I could see that. You could get the passion about that part of it.
Yeah.
But actually watching the race, I'm sort of a bit lost on me.
So for you, it's passed you by, because obviously, as we've spoken about, that this year's Formula One has just stepped up a notch. I mean, last year saw signs of actually a real competitive constructor and drivers championship, and this year there's that point where I'd say Lewis Hamilton's actually the underdog.
Yeah.
Against for how many years has he just bossed it, and now suddenly he's the underdog, which is, I think, from a British point of view, as we love an underdog anyway, so it's been a bit odd to have someone that's British and winning everything. It's almost a little bit, we're apologising for it. That's a British thing to do, isn't it? But with Verstappen in the lead, suddenly you feel like, no, I can really wave the flag now. But I'm really looking forward to it going forward. I'm gutted that Belgium was washed off, and the amazing scenes in Holland.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I went to Holland actually, so I was doing some work over there, and the spirit at the track and everyone behind Max Verstappen is truly lovely, and the way that music was playing as soon as there was a sort of a quiet moment on the track, that was something that we should all embrace. So hopefully that might come to the British Grand Prix to have some music and to get some atmosphere going. But I was also interviewing Mika Hakkinen, who was double world champion in the late 90s. And we were just discussing how the sport has evolved since when he was doing it.
Yeah.
And he was telling me that, today they have, driver coach, driver fitness, dietitians, massages, everything like that. And when he was doing it, he had been racing for a couple of years and he was doing really well, but he wasn't winning. He wasn't winning a championship. So he asked to speak to a doctor and said to the doctor, this is my problem. I'm not winning a championship. What's going on? And he sort of unlocked a few things in his head and bang, very soon after.
A lot of it's marginal gains, isn't it? With all sports now. Exactly. If you haven't got all of those marginal gains unlocked, you can't be at the top. You lose 2%, you're nowhere near the top.
Yep. Fortunately, I'm in the company of a couple of 100%.
I mean, marginal gains. Yeah.
Goodwood Revival, that is coming up in September.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, so that's where they go round and round Goodwood in old, expensive, fabulous machines, and everybody there has to dress up.
And that is
special old gear.
I'd say probably the event of the year for classic car enthusiasts.
Yes.
The dress-up part of it as well as the racing.
Yeah. What happens to a classic car's worth when it's been raced at somewhere like Goodwood? Does it go up or down? What happens?
Do you know, any car that has a story is always going to achieve a better value at auction, and that story could be a celebrity owner or use somewhere. We've had cars before that have been taken to the Monte Carlo rally, in the 30s, and we sold a car here last year that a chap had found in the back of a yard and had redone it, and he took his wife to their wedding, and it turned out it had been driven at Monte Carlo, and the chap found some photos of it being lifted onto the boat to be taken over to France and stuff. So anything with that sort of story is great, but race provenance is probably the best thing that you can have with
eligibility is huge. Mille Goodwood eligibility. People that are purchasing that kind of car are looking specifically to be able to take those cars to those events. It's not a cheap thing to be in, and I know people that restore specifically cars that are able to be eligible for those events, and it costs fortunes, and that's before you get the car over there, the trip. But it's the trip of a lifetime. You're in effect recreating that whole rally, and you're participating in a classic car. So yeah, they are sort of among the top valued cars that you'll find on the auction circuit.
What happens if a car is racing at Goodwood, for example, and it has a massive accident and it has to be severely repaired, and it loses a lot of its original, chassis parts or body parts? What happens then?
It's a fine line, isn't it, between that? Look at the Jaguar XJ13 that was crashed, the prototype car, and found in the bottom of a field. When it was brought back, that's got the most amazing story, and people know all about that car. Originality always helps, but you'd rather have the car back in some form than not, wouldn't you?
And ultimately, they're race cars. So they're sort of not supposed to crash, but the crash is part of the provenance.
Yeah.
And it's a shame if they lose a lot of the original parts, but generally speaking, it's not something like if you crash your XK150 and have to have it fully rebuilt but it's part of the story, part of the provenance. So it's disappointing, probably specifically for the owner who has to then pay for it to be restored. But it doesn't have the effect that you may think per se with your modern car. You crash your modern car, it's on the category D list, it's suddenly worth a third the amount of money. But with classic cars, it's part of the course, especially if they're eligible, if they race.
Yeah. It's kind of like having your own battle scars.
Exactly. Yeah. It's like bitten by a shark, isn't it? Although it wasn't really a shark. That's what I
on
tell
the
the
way
girls.
to Goodwood, that would be a good one.
There are a few sharks around at Goodwood, as we all know.
Another wonderful event that's happened is the Car Fest.
Yes. People at Goodwood are car people only. And people at Car Fests, it's family orientated. I mean, so Mark, who obviously our leader, our founder, he takes up there a number of his character cars, which he's got Batmobiles, he's got the car from the Cars movie, Lightning McQueen.
Yes.
So he takes a load of those up, they do a run, and of course, so that just sort of brings the next generation involved with cars whilst in a sort of festival scene. So it's a nice event, it's well attended, and I think it's a great thing to soften people into getting involved with cars, because I must admit, asking your partner sometimes to go to Goodwood, it can be a bit of a, really? But asking them to go along to Carfest, never difficult.
Yeah, when McFly are playing, straight there.
Yes.
I also saw our esteemed leader, Mark Perkins, on This Morning with Phil and Holly.
Yes. So we were going to make him
summer.
up some T-shirts just to say, "I'm Mark Perkins from the TV," because it was the highlight of his year. I mean, he
was fantastic. He was showing everybody around his fantastic TV cars that he's got.
And how well received was he as well? They loved it. Holly especially.
Yeah.
There was a Batmobile in the showroom. One of the chaps had taken up
into the studio.
Yeah, into the studio, and she was really excited about it. And why not? People queue up to see some of Mark's collection. And they even pay money, which he likes.
We see them in here, of course, don't we? We see them quite often parked down here. We haven't them today, but quite often the Batmobiles are here.
The 7-seat Pontiac GTO that the Monkeys use on their UK tour, where are you going to see that again? And it's an amazing thing, signed by them on the bonnet, and it's a fantastic thing.
Oh, I signed the glove box once of a car that I used to own, and promptly it sort of lost about 10 grand.
Please don't sign anything while you're here.
No worries, fear not. Now, the car that I signed actually was a BMW M3 CSL with a manual gearbox.
Nice.
Yeah.
Manual gearbox.
But
manual
you wish you still own
gearboxes. Oh, I wish I did. Honestly, I'd have made at least 40 grand profit.
It's not all about money.
It is. It is when you've got kids. So manual gearboxes, where do we sit with those? Because they are going to become extinct at some point in the not too distant future with brand new cars. New electric cars obviously don't come with gearboxes, so therefore no manual stick.
So do you drive an automatic or a manual, Dom?
Automatic.
Vicky?
One of each.
Oh, gee, on the fence.
Oh yeah, you?
I've just sold manual to go into automatic.
Because?
Comfort of driving every day. If I were to buy a third car and have it for fun, I'd have a manual.
Yeah.
But from a driving perspective now, the gearboxes are so much better than they used to be as automatics.
Yeah.
And I would find myself driving for 6 hours a day and only really enjoying 45 minutes of that manual gearbox. It's a shame, but with modern automatic gearboxes.
Yeah, you think about those, early 3-speed 1970s gearboxes that were noisy, inefficient, slow, replaced by my 7-speed DSG gearbox in my VW.
Yeah.
You're not losing anything.
The best one was at the 3-speed gearbox on a Mini.
Yeah.
I mean, 3 speeds.
Honestly,
maybe an overdrive.
A slight incline, and honestly, it was like, we're not going to get up this.
Pull a
someone get out!
bonus.
Someone get out!
Oh, I love it, because VW has announced that it will only offer the DSG automatic gearbox from 2030.
Yeah, it's phasing it out completely.
I know, which is only 9 years away.
Yeah, which
if
is
my maths is correct.
I think it's in line with the government desperately pushing everyone towards electric.
Yeah.
So I think that though probably brings what we do in classic cars into sharper focus, because it's a bit like the popularity of V8s and V12s, for instance, because obviously it's going to 4-pot twin turbo supercharged and things like that, which is more efficient. But with manual gearboxes, of course, no one's making manual gearboxes anymore. And for instance, Aston Martin, you can do this with Aston Martin Works, I believe, that you can buy a Vanquish, an automatic Vanquish, and I think it's about £40,000 to have it changed to a manual gearbox.
If I had the money, that's what I would do.
Because that car sounds epic.
That would be the profit from your BMW.
Yes. So I think, what will happen, I hope, because that's what I would think, is that people will buy classics because they want to drive them. They want to physically have to change gear. And we were talking, Daniel and myself in the office yesterday, about an old Bugatti Type 35 where you had to manually pump the oil into the engine every 2 minutes. If you didn't, the engine would explode. So whilst you're racing, changing gear, looking for the apex, clearing the bugs from your eyes, you've also got to remember, keep pumping the oil into the engine. Yeah. I mean, things have moved, but I think people want that manual feel. I mean, we've got power-assisted brakes, power-assisted steering, but when you get into an old car and it's proper steering, manual gearbox, and it's not a heap of junk, of course, but it's a lovely car, it's a completely different experience.
Yeah, you get fully immersed into something like that.
Yeah, and that's not to say I don't appreciate modern flappy paddle and dual clutch gearboxes, because they're amazingly efficient. But I hope that means that classic-wise, manuals will become much, much more desirable, and I think we're starting to see it. I mean, have you got any manual cars in this auction that you think will vastly outprice their automatic counterparts? I
think that we've consigned cars that were manual that we wouldn't have consigned if they were automatic. I think that's possibly the case.
Oh wow!
Yeah,
really?
Certain models, because it's just not in the interest of the the marketplace to sell them, really.
Yeah.
I've got a 348 Ferrari, for instance, and of that era, the automatic gearboxes just didn't cut it. So the manual car was just far more interesting to own and drive.
You can't have a dogleg automatic gearbox, can
no.
you? You know?
So I'd put that £10,000 ahead of an automatic car in exactly the same condition. I'd just put £10,000 more to buy that car in manual guise.
Yeah.
The 360 is the same.
Well, look at Formula One. They don't have.
Yeah.
Well,
when Ayrton Senna was racing,
Nigel Mansell's car was manual change gearbox.
Yeah, exactly.
And he said these modern guys are it's easy peasy, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because they would wear their palms raw, wouldn't they, with changing gear?
Absolutely, yeah. And then get all their gear changes done and their braking done, then wrestle with the car through the corner. Whereas now, they've got the ability to.
So you modern racers, it's just easy.
Oh no, I've got a foot in both camps. So.
But we can't be that old, Vicki.
Would you prefer to be right now? Would you prefer to be that much quicker driving a car around a track with all the modern aids, or would you prefer to be driving the more classic car, not all the way back perhaps, but with the manual gearbox and having to work for it and feeling that connection with the car?
Oh no, I want the easy lap time. I'll go
that's the racing in you. Whatever wins.
Quickest. Yeah,
whatever wins.
Yeah. I recently drove the Ferrari Roma, which is their sort of entry-level coupe. I say entry-level, it's like £170,000. Yeah. But Ferrari's got this philosophy now where it wants the eyes on the road and your hands on the wheel. Yeah. So it's got so much now on a steering wheel. You've got, the indicators are there. Everything's there, but it's actually quite intuitive. After a mile, your muscle memory starts working and you think, oh, yeah, this makes total sense. I want everything here. So maybe now I don't want my left hand on a gear stick.
Recently I had a car with heads-up display, which is Don was talking to you about it, and I've never thought of that as an option. Why would you have that as an option? What's the point?
So this is where
there. Why would you need it there? I mean, what's the difference?
But you love it now, don't you?
Oh, if I was speccing a new car, that would be on the top of the option list. It just makes so much sense. You don't look down. It's in front of you. It's always in your peripheral vision. You're less likely to speed, less likely to have an accident. It's fantastic.
Yeah. So if you want head-up display then as a standard feature in cars, what would your
that's a good
demand
question.
want?
Because I'm old and old-fashioned,
Never.
the thing that I miss most is a CD player. Now, I know that I can download all this, but my collection of 400 CDs are pointless at home.
Yep.
And the time I used to listen to them most was in the car.
Yeah.
So actually, I miss a CD player.
Yes. What's the most ludicrous option you think that you've come across?
When I sold cars, the Range Rover paint palette that was bespoke was the most amazing thing. I remember a chap paid £10,000 extra to have a black colour that you couldn't tell was any different from the standard black colour that you could get for free. But on that sort of, I'm going to tick every option list.
Yeah.
Which as a salesman we used to love.
Oh, of course, because you were earning money.
And you'd never talk them out of it. But I always thought that was a bit crazy.
I know that I've talked about Ferrari quite a lot, but they have quite super options lists that go on for pages and pages.
Yeah, how is that sponsorship deal with Ferrari?
I'm just working on it clearly.
Yes.
So I wanted to see a little quiz to see if you could guess the price. So Apple CarPlay in a Ferrari 812 GTS, for example, their latest. £500.
I bet you they're charging £1,200 for that.
No, you're both way wrong. 2,400. Yeah. And don't forget
that comes standard in a Hyundai.
Yeah, exactly. Crazy, isn't it? What about a rear diffuser in carbon fibre?
Oh, carbon fibre.
Oh, yeah.
£3,000.
Okay, lovely.
6.
Oh yeah, 6,720.
I know my carbon fibre.
Oh yeah. And an aluminium footrest, just the one.
So is that a footrest that's already there, or a footrest has been put in?
So that would be a footrest, aluminium topped footrest.
So just a top, so it's already there. There's no difference.
There'll be some foundation
£700.
£700.
So it's £30 from Halfords or from Ferrari, £2,000.
It's £480.
Oh,
See, it's a bargain, that one.
Bargain,
yeah. Exactly. We
Tick
don't tick
that
that one.
Consigned in this particular sale, this amazing Mustang.
Oh yeah.
Which, when I was first told about it, I was thinking, but it's a Mustang. It's the affordable man's classic, isn't it? You know. I know that now they're right-hand drives. This was a 2020 car, edition 55, so desirable car. I think it was £49,000 list price. Anyway, the chap bought it during lockdown and decided on the car, got the car. It was a bit of a chase to find the car that he wanted because obviously a bit of a scarcity. Got the car, went in the car, said, right, I'd like to do a few things with it. I've seen a few upgrades you can do. What do you think I do? And the chaps at Ford who sold it to him said, well, best person to go and see is Clive Sutton. Clive Sutton, this is down here. And he'll sort of spec you up a car if you wish. So the chap wandered down there, and this is someone that you would love to have sold to back in the day. He ticked every single thing they could possibly do.
Wow.
So this car at this point had literally delivery mileage, all the way down to Clive Sutton. And they then basically, I think it's £43,000 worth. It's now what they call a CS, of upgrades. And it's warranted upgrade. So it still retains a Ford warranty and a warranty from Clive Sutton. So it is in fact a Ford, sort of breathed on Ford, a bit like Shelby-like really. It has 800, at the soft end, 850 brake horsepower.
Oh my gosh.
0 to 60 sub 3 seconds.
Motorbike speeds.
But you look at it and it looks obviously beefy and it's a bit tasty. But you're still thinking it's a £50,000 Mustang. You don't realise that under the hood it's supercar territory.
Yeah.
So that car now, I think it's up around about the £90,000 mark here. But of course, the difference you have, no waiting list, delivery mileage.
Yeah.
I think there's 15 of these that have been made, and unbelievable. But talk about tick everything.
Drive
everything.
It home.
I think he ran out of things that he could physically tick. Couldn't do anymore.
I know that you like to name drop, Dom.
I don't like to talk about my celebrity friends.
But the Queen, she has something quite specific, doesn't she, when it comes to options?
She quite often has cloth seats in her cars.
Love that. And is that to keep her snug and warm? Because leather can be a bit sticky,
bit cold.
Say. And cold.
Yeah, unless you've got your heated seats that we all love so much.
She has a certain sort of area for her clutch bag, doesn't she?
Always a built-in handbag stowage area, along with the fact that they're quite custom built, all of her cars, because obviously they are in contact with the car's lead behind, and it's quite a sort of spec'd car from point of view of keeping them safe, and not quite to the standard, I think, of, the Beast that the president drives around in the States. But they're always particularly well spec'd. And I remember years ago I spoke to a chap who consigned a car who used to be on the police force that used to look after the Queen and, at the time, Margaret Thatcher. And at the time, those cars could only, once they come out of service, could only be owned and kept by a select few in like a club. I say club's not the right word, that were ex-forces. Otherwise, they had to be scrapped.
Wow.
I think technology moves on so fast now, I don't think it's necessary. But back then, it was so that no one could see what they were doing. They were cars that were a bit like military vehicles.
But we've sold cars that belonged to Her Majesty in the past, haven't we?
We did. Oh, there's a funny story about that one. So we sold this, I think it was a Daimler or a Jaguar long wheelbase, and Stuart, who works, he consigned it, and this was one of Mark's greatest moments. Let's take a photo of outside of Windsor Castle, not far from here. Well, that's easier said than done. You're not allowed to pull up, stop, and take photos outside the castle because obviously they think that it could be a terrorist threat or something sinister. So they literally, the photos were someone ducked down behind the steering wheel and very quickly taking photos before they got ushered away. And then, it's sort of, this is the Queen's, and it's a moment for the sort of security guards to sort of, do you mean it's the Queen's?
Yeah.
That couple of moments, couple more shots, get out of here quick.
Thank you very much indeed, gentlemen, for our
Vicki.
delicious chats now. Yeah. What can we look forward to on the next podcast?
Right, Matt? So next podcast is going to be you, me and Tom at Ascot.
Tom Exton, the YouTuber. Super. So the next Historics auction is on September the 25th at Ascot, but we will be back before then. Dominic, Mathew,
Vicki,
thank you so much. Thanks. Until next time.
Bye-bye.